This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries, the residents of a Florida nudist camp were stunned to discover that one of their most popular members was allegedly a fraud, a cheat, and a child molester. In Ypsilanti, Michigan, a small-town realtor was callously gunned down in his office by two unknown killers. Was this regular family man the victim of a professional hit? In a tiny church in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, the congregation are certain that they have witnessed a miracle. The eyes of Jesus on the carved wooden statue over their altar were once open. Now they say the eyes are closed. Join me for these fascinating stories. Perhaps someone somewhere has that one vital clue that can help solve a mystery. Perhaps that someone is watching. Perhaps it's you. Ypsilanti, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit, January 11th, 1984. The real estate office of Jack Brown. At approximately 11:10 a.m., two men entered. As one stood guard, the other headed toward Jack's office.
Yeah, we have trouble here.
It appeared that the men were familiar with the layout of the building.
Think you're pretty smart, don't you?
Well, maybe.
Don't move or I'll shoot! Where's the bathroom?
Way in the back. Way in
that
the
it?
back.
Well, hurry!
Oh, God.
Follow us. Is that it back there? Come on! Come on. Get in there and close the door. Now!
Leaving the three employees locked in the bathroom, the two men walked away. Jack Brown died 12 hours later from a single bullet wound to the neck. He never regained consciousness. Jack Brown had lived in Ypsilanti for most of his life and was a member of the local Chamber of Commerce and Rotary Club. At the time of his death, he was 47 years old. The murder of Jack Brown was no random act of violence, nor was robbery the motive. It appeared to be a cold-blooded contract killing, planned and executed by professionals. But Brown was no mafia don. He was a small-town realtor. Who ordered him killed, and why? A 5-year investigation has not been able to answer these questions.
Annie, hi, how you doing?
Jack's real estate brokering business put him in contact with many members of the community. They could not imagine why he would have been targeted by a killer.
Well, listen, you asked us to find you a classic Victorian. Well,
There was absolutely nothing in Jack's background that I was aware of that would warrant any kind of problem whatsoever. And surely not the tragedy that happened here. My opinion of the gunmen is that they came here to challenge Jack in some way.
We got trouble here.
I heard the gunman say, "You think you're smart, don't you?"
Well,
And I heard Jack say in kind of a halting voice, well, maybe. At that point, the gun went off, and I guess I really figured that we had bought the farm, that they were then going to get rid of 3 eyewitnesses to a murder. But I guess looking back on it, it would seem to me to be a case where whatever problem they had was with Jack and not the rest of us that happened to be in the office that fateful morning.
No one seems to know anything shady about Jack or anything that he might have been involved in that could be termed shady, which leads us to believe that maybe he was living a double life, was involved in something that no one knew about his family, friends, or anyone in this area.
The night before Jack's murder, his brother saw him on the phone in a state of extreme agitation.
Where's Jack? He's back on the phone back there.
When I arrived, Jack was on the phone. I could tell, by his conversation that he was getting upset. So when he finally, hung the phone up, I asked him if there's a problem.
That's nothing. I just got a few problems I got to work out. You guys have a good time at the poker game. I'll see you tomorrow, okay?
Okay. I honestly feel, in my own heart that something about that phone call, was involved with what happened the following day.
It's really strange when someone is murdered or taken from you suddenly like this, that you look back and you search your mind, you search everywhere for clues, and you remember things that someone said that didn't fit.
It was a fun party, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jack and I had been to a Christmas party, and I was just a little irritated with him because he'd had a bit much to drink and he was kind of rambling.
But what would you do if you knew some very important people, some very powerful people, did something very wrong? Would you write their names in a list and put it in a safe deposit box?
What are you talking about?
Probably safer for you not to know.
When I talk to you and tell you these things that my husband said to me, I'm almost embarrassed. It just sounds so unreal. Politically powerful people doing something really wrong, and then you just let it drop. I mean, I'm an intelligent person, and you say, well, why didn't she find out more about it? I mean, and I look back and I really wished I had, but he told me that it was not something I should know. And it may sound silly, but I believed him. After I recovered from the initial shock of his death, then these little comments that he dropped in conversation started coming back to me. And I searched for that safety deposit key. It was nowhere in my house. I mean, I have just searched. I'd like this resolved. I want to know. I want to know who those powerful people were. I want to know what their names are. I want the killers, the people that actually did it, but I want to know the people that hired them.
The same day that Jack was murdered, a major drug bust occurred in the area, triggered by an anonymous informant. Could there have been a connection?
I think it's very possible there are people in the community that know more about what happened, that for some reason either they're afraid to say, or maybe for instance, if he knew something about someone else, that person's obviously not going to tell us what they know.
It really seems unfair because Jack didn't deserve to die. If he did do something wrong, he did something bad, I've thought in my mind that maybe I didn't want to know, that if he did something bad, I don't want to know about him. But it's not true. I can think of anything he could have done that would give those people the right to come in and take his life.
The man who shot Jack was 35 to 40 years old, approximately 6 feet in height, and wore a beige jacket and light-colored pants. He was armed with a .38 caliber revolver. His accomplice was approximately 50 years in age and was about 5 feet 10 in height. He was wearing coveralls and a blue knit stocking cap. He was also armed with an automatic handgun. Next, the story of an extraordinary occurrence in a tiny Pennsylvania church. The parishioners at Holy Trinity believe they witnessed a genuine miracle. To many Catholics, miracles are an accepted part of their religious beliefs. These miracles can take many forms, but usually involve phenomena occurring before witnesses that cannot be explained by any known science. But the Church is extremely conservative when it comes to officially recognizing a miracle. To date, only a handful have been seriously investigated, and only 3 in this century have been authenticated. In 1917, Fatima, Portugal was the site of the most famous 20th century miracle. That year, 3 young children said that God had promised to show a sign of his existence. And on the day and specified time, in the middle of a rainstorm and in front of a huge crowd, the clouds parted, and according to witnesses and reporters, the sun apparently touched the earth. Today, thousands annually make the pilgrimage to Fatima to celebrate this divine occurrence. More recently, another miracle is said to be taking place in a small Yugoslavian village called Medjugorje. Since 1981, 4 girls and 2 boys claim that they are being regularly visited by the Virgin Mary. She still appears to 4 of them daily in a local church and has told them that this will be the last time she will appear until the second coming of Christ, a visit that will signal the end of the world. This miracle has been dismissed by the bishop in Medjugorje, but at the request of the Pope, it is currently being reinvestigated. Right now, in a small town in Pennsylvania, another miracle is said to have occurred, this time in front of a number of witnesses. Some skeptics believe that this is nothing more than a hallucination. Others suspect a hoax. But many eyewitnesses are positive that they experienced something that has no physical or scientific explanation, a phenomenon they insist was divinely inspired. 20 miles north of Pittsburgh, the area surrounding Ambridge, Pennsylvania has been slowly dying. Abandoned steel mills line the banks of the Ohio River, a grim reminder of the region's lost prosperity. But the many residents of Ambridge refuse to move out of town. Some of these people gather together in the Holy Trinity Church to gain strength from their religious beliefs and one another. The Holy Trinity Church is a simple house of worship, a reflection of the people that gather under its steeple. But the church is justifiably proud of its beautiful suspended crucifix. This wooden plaster icon has been at the church since 1931. It was refurbished last January by local artist Dominic Leo.
I became really deeply involved for 2 weeks with the crucifix. It was a crucifix that had been here at this church possibly over 60 years. So now it was time to restore it. And when I completed everything and finally got to the face, I actually worked on all of the face and the eyes last of all. And when I got to the eyes, then I just painted them and put the color of the blue-gray into the retina. And then I started to put some accents into the sockets of the eye to show the color of death.
On March 24th, 1989, a special 3-hour Mass was held to celebrate Good Friday. Worshipping together was a devoted prayer group, 300 men and women who take their Catholic beliefs very seriously. Jim Savitkovic is a nephew of the parish priest, and that night he was serving as an altar boy.
Everything was normal, we had our readings and sang the songs in veneration of the cross. I got communion, and I went down on the side of the altar, just waiting for everyone else to get done. That's when my brother Tom came up next to me. And I was, looking up and I was praying.
As Jim looked heavenward into the face of Christ, he had a stunning surprise. The eyes that were once open now appear to be closed.
When I first noticed that the eyes were closed, I was shocked. I didn't know what to believe at first. I was happy, but I was scared at the same time because, you figure that God, he did this right there while I was kneeling right there.
Tom.
What? And I turned to tell my brother Tom.
Just look.
And he looked up and verified what I saw.
His eyes are closed. Go to the other side and check. Maybe the
But then we thought maybe it was just the lights or something. Just to make sure that, we just weren't seeing things. I had to go to the other side. I looked up and noticed that the eyes were still closed. It didn't hit me until we went into the back, and I had time to think about it for a few minutes. And that's when I started crying because, you don't expect something like that to happen. And, it was something I was a part of.
They were crying. And I asked them what happened, and they said the eyes on the cross are closed. So I went back out with another priest who was helping me that evening, and we looked, and there was a change. And I started to look around in church at the people, and I happened to look in the back. Going out the doors was the artist who had refurbished the cross, and I called out his name 2 or 3 times and asked him to come to the altar area. And I just simply said to him, would you look at the cross and tell me what you see?
At first, when he told me that, I was wondering, I says, what could possibly be wrong? I says, is it falling down? And the second thing I says, it don't look like it's falling down. I says, is it a defect? Some of the plaster's falling down or something, And it wasn't that. And then my attention and everything was just grabbed, and my neck just flipped back, and my eyes just went straight up to the crucifix. And when I looked up there, I couldn't believe what I saw, because not only were the eyes closed, but there was like all kinds of tears underneath it, and they were fleshy, like, the eyelids were moving and moving like this, and all the tears were in there, and it was just like as if the crucifixion had just started again from 2,000 years. It looked just like that. They were all on their knees and everything. It was just, I could never forget that. Never.
Since the crucifix was suspended 22 feet in the air, a ladder was brought in to allow for a closer look. Dominic was the first to make the climb.
I went up to the tip top of the A ladder. I straddled the ladder at the top of it, and I had a very close look at the eyes.
The left eye's closed, and the right eye is slightly open.
It was just unbelievable what I saw. This eye here was closed completely except for a little sliver of gray. But this eye here was open slightly, and you could just see the bottom of the retina. And this is what really did it, because when I seen that, it looked like it was burned, that it had been burned, from energy of some sort.
Another parishioner who had to see for himself was Pennsylvania State Trooper Chris Marion.
I wanted to make sure nobody had tampered with it. And I got real close, like a 3-year-old would look into its father's face. And as I looked at it, I realized there's no way, it was too high. I knew no one could have tampered with it, and it was fine, and I felt good about it. I'm sort of glad that this happened to me, because as a state trooper, and I've been one for 28 years, I've been trained to look at things a little differently than the normal eye, just like I knew the crucifix a lot better than everybody. Well, I knew that everything that happened here, wasn't some hoax. This wasn't a bunch of people just making this up. These are the type of people you drink beer with every day, and everything that happened here was for a reason, and was definitely the most religious experience that I've ever heard of in my lifetime.
Sue Tolfa was another member of the prayer group familiar with the cross.
The cross used to be in an alcove area where anyone could come and light the big candles. And I've done that lots of times, and anybody that has ever lit a candle, when you look up, Jesus is looking at you. I remember the eyes were opened very clearly, the eyeballs, the white, the bluish gray. He was a live Christ dying on the cross, and his eyes were still opened. And that, on Good Friday, they closed.
That night, as he stood beneath the cross, a parishioner claimed to have received a divine message. He wrote it down and shared it with his fellow believers. It read in part, "I have given this sign for all those who have faithfully come. Truly, my presence is within this church. Within the months to come, many will flock to see what I have done. Welcome them, just as the people of Medjugorje welcome those who flock to see my mother." Medjugorje has more than a spiritual connection with Ambridge. Many of the Holy Trinity parishioners are of Yugoslav descent, and 4 former Ambridge priests were born in this small town. Today, some members of the prayer group regularly make pilgrimages to Medjugorje. Suzanne Rini is a Catholic scholar. She feels that the parishioners' impassioned faith led them into seeing something that did not exist.
There's a very, very great possibility that it could be a subjective reality that's born of the desire to share in the same kind of thing that has happened in Medjugorje. Terrific hunger to have it happen here, and also as a kind of affirmation that their prayer group is a successful prayer group, that it's pleasing to God, and therefore he sends them this sign.
The Catholic Church shares in this skepticism, for this event cannot be authenticated by the Church as a miracle until it undergoes a rigorous investigation, in this case by a commission headed by the local Bishop of Pittsburgh.
There is always value when people return to their faith, but you would want them to return for the right reasons. For what if they found out later that there was some deception here or some defraud that could be very harmful to their faith? And that's what the Church is always concerned about in an investigation like this, that we are very objective, that we are very careful because of the harm that can come to faith.
Since that Good Friday, Ambridge has been visited by thousands of people who went to see the crucifix for themselves. But what really happened in the Holy Trinity Church? Miracle or hallucination? Even if the eyes of Christ didn't close, one can readily admit that some kind of a miracle has taken place. Ambridge has retreated from its inexorable slide into depression, and many of its residents have found a new reason to believe in their church and in each other.
At times I sit here, I wonder if, is this of God? Is this of something evil, that's taking place? But I know that people who are coming here are praying. I know people are coming here, they have dreams. They come from all over the place, and when they leave, they have peace. So to me, this is all positive.
I think my little nephew summed it up best for me. He said to me, Uncle Chris, I know what happened. He's 5 years old, and I said, what happened? He said, well, God closed his eyes so everybody else would open theirs.
We all need signs of affection, signs of love at time. We need to be reassured. And I think maybe miracles are a way of God's reassuring us of his love.
Several weeks after we completed filming this story, the Bishop of Pittsburgh's commission announced his decision on the events that took place in Ambridge. The Bishop's commission reviewed videotape and photographs that showed the crucifix before and after the alleged miracle of Good Friday, and stated that there was no convincing evidence that a miracle, properly defined, occurred at Holy Trinity Church. This decision means that the Vatican will take no further action on this case. However, the Bishop's commission did go on to say that the witnesses were sincere, and many of the people we interviewed for this story are still convinced that what they saw really happened. They are unshaken in their belief that a miracle did in fact occur. Whatever the truth, the events of this Good Friday did serve to bring a troubled community together under one roof and under one God. To many people on Ambridge, this is one miracle that cannot be dismissed. In a moment, we'll reveal how our viewers helped put an embezzler who built the Medicare system out of $16 million behind bars. Last May, we examined the shocking case of Sheldon Weinberg, a New York businessman who, along with his 2 sons, Ronald and Jay, stole an estimated $16 million of taxpayers' money that was earmarked for medical care for the poor. This illicit father and son operation became the largest Medicaid fraud case ever prosecuted in the United States. In 1979, Sheldon Weinberg and his sons opened the Bed-Stuy Health Care Clinic in one of Brooklyn, New York's most impoverished neighborhoods. The facility employed over 25 physicians and catered primarily to Medicaid recipients. The Weinbergs immediately began defrauding the system by submitting up to $30,000 per week in false billings to the government.
They began small, manually writing up phony records and phony bills. But once they started getting away with it, they realized the scam was working.
When the Weinbergs started using a computer to create bills and medical records for non-existent visits and services, their profits soared from thousands to millions of dollars.
I don't know. Jay, can we bring these numbers up?
Why not?
Hey, looks
They
good.
used Medicaid like it was a private bank account for them. And from that bank account, the Weinbergs led the high life on the backs of poor people. I think their appetite for conspicuous living, for fancy clothes, and especially shoes, was only outdone by Imelda Marcos.
For 7 years, the money rolled in. But in April of 1986, the Weinbergs' elaborate scheme started to unravel when authorities began to investigate the clinic's billing practices. For over 4 weeks, auditors painstakingly searched through the clinic's records and traced the phony Medicaid billings.
If you look at the medical chart, you'll see that a 4-year-old boy was shown as having smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day and having drank a quarter of booze a day. You found men with gynecological problems, and that's the type of things that jumped out off the paper at you.
On November 30th, 1988, Sheldon Weinberg and his 2 sons, Ronald and Jay, were convicted of grand larceny, conspiracy, and 63 other counts relating to their Medicaid fraud scheme. Ronald Weinberg was sentenced to spend 5 to 15 years in prison. Jay Weinberg received an 8 to 25-year sentence, plus additional prison terms for tax evasion. 3 days before Sheldon Weinberg was to be sentenced, he disappeared along with his wife, Rosalind. He was sentenced in absentia to a 7 to 21-year prison term. Update. Within 3 hours of our broadcast, Sheldon Weinberg was arrested by FBI agents in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he and his wife were living under assumed names.
Right after the show aired, we got specific information from callers who had seen them all over the Scottsdale area. And one of the callers told us that the Weinbergs were using the alias DeVita, and this corresponded with information we previously had back here in New York that they were traveling under that name. So when the caller told us that he had seen people that looked like the Weinbergs using the name DeVita in Scottsdale, we knew we had our man.
On May 19th, Weinberg was extradited back to New York, and 3 days later appeared before New York State Supreme Court Justice Ruth Moskowitz, who reimposed the 7 to 21-year sentence.
I do not regard this as a white-collar crime. This is a crime of violence to all of the people of New York City. This is a crime of violence to the Medicaid recipients. Medicaid state funds should not go so that people could live in Trump Towers, so that people could live in luxury on Florida estates. Hopefully, the message will go out loud and clear to other people that the court system will not tolerate this type of crime. Execute sentence.
To date, authorities have recovered less than $6 million of the estimated $16 million that Weinberg and his son stole from taxpayers. Sheldon Weinberg is currently serving his sentence at the Attica Correctional Facility in upstate New York. Next, the story of a con man who allegedly fleeced thousands of dollars out of his friends and neighbors at a Florida nudist camp. For 40,000 Americans, nudity is a way of life. Sunny Sands Resort in Northeast Florida is one of the 200 nudist clubs in the American Sunbathing Association. Clothes aren't outlawed here, just avoided. Many outsiders consider public nudity strange or sexually exploitive, but to the 66 families of Sunny Sands, being nude is only being natural.
There's a real unfortunate misconception that being in a nudist club means sexual behavior, means a lot of drinking, a lot of party atmosphere, that kind of thing. And here you don't find that kind of atmosphere. Here you find families. In a nudist club, you'll find that things are a lot more wholesome than at Daytona Beach or downtown Orlando or a lot of places.
While many of us consider nudity offbeat, its devotees feel that lifestyle without clothes is healthier and more open. However, from time to time, the clubs attract single men whose only purpose is to exploit this environment. So they must carefully screen their applicants. They don't always succeed, as we'll see in our next story.
Good morning, may I help you?
Hi, my name's Rusty.
In February 1988, a clever con man calling himself Garland Houston Russell, Rusty for short, arrived at the Sunny Sands Resort and asked to join the camp.
Rusty was immediately likable. He was not high pressure. He explained to us that he was looking for a place to live, but he understood when we told him that he couldn't move in right away, that we needed time to have him get to know us and us to get to know him.
Being a single guy, we're a little careful. And as far as, I think probably the easiest way to say is he was very friendly and very comfortable, but he was also very lonely. And he gave you the feeling like he was looking for a family. And he was looking for someone to share his life with. Kind of looking for a new home.
Rusty told the camp's owners that he had been discharged from the Air Force after the tragic sudden death of his parents in a car crash. He claimed their estate was in probate. He'd be wealthy when it was settled.
I traveled around a bit and wound up here, and when I came here, it felt like it should be home. Yeah, we're glad you feel that way. We've had a chance to talk to some of the people that have met you since you've been here, and they all seem to like you, and it seems to us that you fit in really well. And we'd like to have you stay. The rental's available, and if you'd like it, it's yours. I appreciate it. Welcome aboard.
Everybody seemed to like Rusty. He did everything for everybody. The part that amazed me, he really loved children. And my children loved him. They thought of him as like a big brother or an uncle.
Rusty renovated an empty store in Crescent City, 15 miles away, and stocked it with videotapes he said he'd acquired while in the service. Police now suspect he stocked the entire store with inventory stolen in Texas.
So put that down there, okay? Ken, how you been?
For members of Sunny Sands, he had a special deal.
Thanks, Rusty.
He sold the tapes to his friends, then bought them back at a slightly higher price. A tax dodge, he told them.
Sure did. Hey, here's the deal. You're going to give me a check for $500. I'm going to give you a check for $600. You hold that check for 90 days. You pick up 20% on your money. You cash the check after 90 days. You pick up 20% on your money. You get to watch the tapes. You give the tapes back to me. And then I'll rent these tapes out as used tapes, you see. Okay. And then I get over on the government, right? Sounds beautiful. Right. You make the money. I'd rather give it to you than the government. That sounds great. Wouldn't it? It is great. The people we spoke to who had invested with Rusty early on, everybody had seemed to have made their money back, their principal plus their 20% interest. They had, at a maximum, people had invested maybe $1,000 with Rusty, had made $1,000 plus their $200 interest.
Who is it?
Rusty.
Oh, Rusty.
After 4 months, Rusty wanted to expand the store.
Hello.
He approached the neighbor for a $20,000 loan.
Fine.
She quickly agreed.
Oh, great. Everybody's great.
Good. Listen, I have an opportunity to share some wealth with you.
Just 6 weeks later, Rusty asked a second couple for $20,000 more.
See, what I want to do is to save some money on my taxes.
He didn't tell this couple about the first investor.
Is by selling my store to you and then
He needed money to buy more tapes, more equipment, and so forth. And we wanted to make a little interest on the money. So it was just an investment as far as we were concerned and helping out somebody at the same time.
Hey, Rusty, how are you? Hey, Robert, now don't you fill up on that because
Rusty flourished at Sunny Sands. Surrounded by happy families who supported his business, this lonely man seemed to have found his place in the sun. On August 28, 1988, Rusty's careful setup began to unravel when the 11-year-old daughter of his closest friends fled in tears from his trailer.
She said that he threw her against the wall, and then he threw her on the bed, and that he was touching her all over. The rest is a little personal. And in trying to do that, that's when she hit him. And she hit him 3 times before she got away from him.
State attorneys issued a warrant for Rusty's arrest for sexual battery against a child under 12, a charge for which he would be held without bond.
Volusia County Sheriff's Department.
Come on in.
Investigators of Volusia County Sheriff's Department. We have a warrant for your arrest.
You have a warrant for my arrest?
Volusia County warrant number 88090744.
Officer, there's been a mistake.
Felony warrant.
We handcuffed him, put him back in the back of the marked car, and took him over to operations to be processed and to try to interview him. He verified the little girl's story, except he put a different slant on it. He put a different light on it. He did say that, yeah, they were nude and they were in the trailer. Of course, that's not so unusual. They're in a nudist camp. And he admitted to touching her, touching the little girl, pretty much all over her body. The way he explained it was, he said, we were having fun, we were wrestling. That didn't ring true, it just wasn't right. But he held fast to his story that that he had no intent to assault her.
When Rusty was arrested, nobody believed it. The people in the camp were all shocked. You know, here we were taking this man who everybody liked. He was everybody's friend, everybody's big brother, and turn around and say, well, he did something so despicable. And they turned against us. It was a lot easier to say, oh, no, that child's lying. You know, it's easier to blame the child than it is to say, well, this guy who's so nice isn't, you know, as nice as we thought.
I would have believed that Rusty would have stolen our entire 50 acres and walked away with it before I would have believed that he hurt a little girl. Only because that's the way he presented himself.
Rusty's loyal friends convinced the judge to grant Rusty release on $25,000 bail. Rusty asked Bob Pickens, his landlord at the video store, to post his bond.
Before, this has happened before. Her grandparents are coming down to testify in my behalf. Bob, you gotta get me out of this place.
Rusty, I'll do what I can. I was surprised when Rusty was arrested, and very frankly, he convinced me that he was innocent. That I suppose indicates some naivety on my part, but he was very convincing.
Bob Pickens arranged to have the money available in 24 hours. In those same 24 hours, the Noonans were also trying to raise Rusty's bail. As they looked into Rusty's business accounts, they were shocked to see he was seriously overdrawn at the bank and had lied to them about what he owned.
Doesn't own the property?
He ends up being overdrawn by over $1,000, $1,068.
That's not right.
The facade that Rusty had built about being the honest businessman that he was is now coming apart like a bad brick wall. And in fact, if he was a bad guy financially, the chances are he was a bad guy with the child molestation charges. We tried to get a hold of the bonding agent. We spoke to her and explained what was going on, but she wouldn't tell us who was posting the collateral. We tried to find out, but before we could find out who it was posting the collateral for his bail, he was out. We missed him by minutes.
I was really shocked. You know, he got out on bail, and he shouldn't have. I was told by the investigator he was not going to be granted bail, but then he managed to con his way into it.
Start again, I guess.
In the next 48 hours, Rusty persuaded Bob Pickens to buy his business, telling him that his reputation as a businessman had been ruined. Bob learned later he was the third person to whom Rusty had sold his inventory.
As soon as I found out there were other individuals, I made every effort to have Rusty apprehended and the bail removed, but I was unsuccessful.
Rusty raised more cash by selling his car to 2 different unsuspecting parties. Then he rented another car and disappeared. He never showed up for his court date.
When Rusty took off, I felt sick, disappointed, surprised, and somewhat of a fool. This guy took us all for a ride.
No matter what happens, we know we'll never get our money back. But right at this point, the money is immaterial. Right now, the big thing I want Rusty caught is what he did to that child. That child will never be the same for the rest of her life.
I want him caught. I want him punished, and I want him stopped. I want him to go to jail where he can't get his hands on other children.
Police have since learned that Garland Houston Russell is not Rusty's real name. It is one of the 42 aliases used by William Eugene Hilliard. The real Garland Russell, a man from Tennessee, is another innocent victim of Hilliard's cons. Hilliard has been arrested in 14 states and is wanted for fraud in Florida and Texas. His swindles total at least $500,000. Hilliard has green eyes and is nearly bald. He disguises his appearance with a toupee of straight brown hair, often worn with a headband. He is 44 years old, weighs 200 pounds, and is 6 feet tall. Within minutes of our broadcast, several viewers from South Carolina called our telecenter to report that they recognized William Eugene Hilliard. The morning after our broadcast, Hilliard was arrested by Georgetown County Sheriff's deputies at a convenience store in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, a small town just south of Myrtle Beach. He was living under the assumed name Ronald Edward Kent. On October 20th, Hilliard was returned to Florida to face charges of fraud and sexual battery against a child under 12. If convicted of the sexual battery charge, Hilliard could receive the death penalty. A final note on tonight's broadcast. Last week, we presented the poignant story of Jim Meade, a helicopter pilot who was injured in Vietnam. Eventually, he made a startling recovery and for 15 years searched for the nurse who taught him how to walk and talk again. The morning after our broadcast, Jim's search came to an end. We received a surprise phone call from Karen Stevens, who identified herself as the Army lieutenant who nursed Jim. She lives only 30 miles from Jim. Was astounded to see her own story on national television. Jim and Karen are planning to get together soon, and we will bring you their heartwarming reunion on one of our next broadcasts.